Hello, dear students. This is Mr. Samara. I'm here to guide you on some of the tactical questions that I have been revising in class actively with those who have been in attendance. For some of you might have not had the opportunity to have a one-on-one class revision sessions with me. This video is done for you. I hope it's going to break it down for you for easy understanding. So the question itself is here. We have the past, so we have the past papers for 2021, both May and November series. So if I may share the first one, that is for May. You will be able to see the screen. Allow me to zoom it a bit. So this is May series exams. We have this project. So Isaac is a program developer, but that question is, Figure 3 shows an algorithm Isaac has written. The algorithm looks as follows. That is start here, represented in oval shape. Then we have array and objects in each array. So arrays, we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. In each array, we have a value or an object. So in array 0, we have value 10. In array 1, we have value 6. In array 2, we have value 1. And in array 3, we have value 9. In array 4, we have value 3. Then the instruction goes down and tells us count equals to 1. This is going to guide us on answering the question in pressing through the table. So count equals to 0, length equals to 4, midpoint equals to 2, and temp equals to 0. I know some of you might be wondering what temp is. In my classes, I have mentioned that temp is a temporary variable. Temporary, that means it can change. A variable is a value that can change, or a place that holds value. So that is why we have this temp. It is not for temperature. Some of you might assume it is temporary variable. So that is what is going to help us to achieve the target of this flowchart. Then we are at the point where the decision is made. We have count is less than midpoint. If that is not true, if count is less than midpoint, we stop. If it is not, then we continue with yes. So temp equals to number count. So this is going to guide us on answering trace table. These statements here. So when we go to the trace table, you're told complete the trace table. You may not need to use all the rows. The rows are as shown here. We have a section where we have the count, length, midpoint, temp. Then array, number in array, we have numbers shown. So when we go back to our flowchart from the decision point, temp equals to number count. So under temp, we're going to look for the value of this temporary variable. Remember, the count is 0 according to this flowchart. The count in this case is still 0. We are just starting to trace through the table. So at this point, the count is still 0. Okay, but remember, this is going to require us to repeat or loop this process until we achieve the midpoint, which is equals to 2. So since the count is 0, you check in the array list where the number 0 is, and the value that is in 0 is 10. So where do we put this 10? In our trace table. Go to temp, because we are tracing temp, the first statement after the decision. We are tracing the variable for temp. under count. What is in count? Right now it is still 0. Under 0 is still 10. Is 10, I mean. So the value that we're going to put under temp is 10. Allow me to make these values a bit bigger so that it is more visible. Yeah, it can also be a line center. So I'm going to type 10 here. So that is where you expect to put your 10. We were tracing the temporary variable temp. And the array is 0. So the value in array 0 is 10. We put it under temp here. I hope that is clear. Then we continue to the next line. Number equals to temp. Sorry, number count equals to number length minus count. Remember, we are tracing number count. The number length is 4 as per this flowchart. You can see it here. The count is still 0. So 4 minus 0 is 4. So when you go to the array where we have 4, what do we get? 3. But we are tracing count. So you go to the table and under 0 here in array, we put 3. I hope that is clear. We move to the next one. Number length minus count equals to temp. We had traced temp to be 10, if you remember. We had traced temp to be 10 here. Okay, so number length, which is 4 minus count, which is 0, is going to be 4. Number length minus count equals to temp. So temp is 10. So where we have 4 in array here, this is where we put our initial trace temp to be 10. So we put it under 4 here. Because how do we put it under 4? We have traced number length, which is 4 minus 0, that is 4. So 4 and temp had already been traced to be 10. So here the temp is 10, but we put it under the array 4 here. Then we proceed to the next. Count equals to count plus 1. Count equals to count equals to count plus 1. Remember, count is 0. So if you add 0 plus 1, you get 1. So under count here, we're going to put 1. So we have done the first full circle of tracing through this table. Remember, the midpoint is said to be 2 here. So we have not achieved it. We are going to loop this process or iterate it until we achieve the midpoint 2. How do we go about it? We start again after the decision. Temp equals to number count. Remember, temp had been traced initially. Number count, which was 0, now it is 1. The count is 1. So a value in 1, come here. A value in 1 is now 6, not 10. So a value in 1 and the temp, we're going to put 6 here. Can I repeat that for better understanding? Temp equals to number count. The count has changed from 0. Initially it was 0 here, but now we have changed count here to 1. So number count, temp equals to number count. So the count, the value in count in 1 right now, not 0. The value in 1, according to the array, is 6. Where do we put it? The same place we put temp when we're looking at temp equals to numbers count, which was 0. So we put it under temp below 10. I hope that's clear. We continue with the loop. Number count, remember count is 1, equals to number length, which is 4, length 4, minus count, which is 1. So 4 minus 1, that is 3. So when you check on 3, you get 9. Where do we put this 9? It's supposed to be on number count, but under count 1. So when you trace it on the trace table, you put it here. 9 is that. The reason why we put it under 1, the count had been traced to be 1 from 0. I hope that's clear. Then we continue. Count equals to count plus 1. Remember, we had traced count to be 1, so it is equal to 1 plus 1, that is 2. So this 2 will be put under here, and we shall have met the midpoint. It was the target. So that is how this process is done, or tracing through the trace table is done. It is that simple, but very, very tricky. You have to loop it until the point where you are told you have reached the midpoint. A similar context, but a little bit different. Let me zoom it a bit so that is more visible for us. This is the question. This is series of November the same year, 2021. An algorithm can be used to perform calculations and to process data. A states what is meant by the term algorithm. As we all know, algorithm is a step-by-step procedure to complete a process or to solve a particular problem, or a set of instructions that can be followed to solve a particular problem. But my main focus in this is to help you trace through the table using a flowchart. So part B, figure 3 shows an algorithm that has start, as shown here. Number 1 equals to 1. Number 2 equals to 1. Output number 1, number 2. Count equals to 0. Then we have a decision count equals to 2. If yes, stop, no. Number 3 equals to number 2 plus number 1. Output is number 3. Number 1 equals to number 2. Number 2 equals to number 3. Count equals to count plus 1. Almost the same as what we have just done, but different. Then, but from an A of the question, complete this trace table for the algorithm. You may not need to use all the rows, just like the other one. So we have all the rows there. So let's get to it. I said this happens after the decision is made. So number 3 equals to number 2 plus number 1. Remember, number 1 is given to be 1, and number 2 equals to number 1. So number 3 is going to be 1 plus 1 in this case. So where we have number 3 here, we're going to put and make them increase the size of that so that whatever is typed can easily be seen. So where we have number 3, we put 2. It is number 1, which is equals to 1. Number 2 equals to number 1. Number 1 is 1. So 1 plus 1 gives us 2. So where do we put it? We put it in number 3 because that is what we are looking for here. Proceed. Output number 3. We have already got a number 3. So we can go to the output and give it to be 2. Okay, that is the output. The only difference that we have before the decision, up here we were told output number 1 and number 2, number 1, number 2. When you check the trace table, number 1 here was 1, and here number 2 was number 1, was 1. So when you output, you give 1, 1 or 11. The reason why this is 11 is because you are outputting both number 1 and number 2. Number 1, and number 2. Number 1 is 1, number 2 is 1. So when you output both of them, you get 1, 1 or 11. The reason why we are having 2, we have gotten number 3 to be 2, so the output here is number 2. I hope that is helpful. Okay, let's proceed. Number 1 equals to number 2. So where number 1 is, we put the value of number 2 because we've been told number 1 equals to number 2. Number 2, in this case, number 2 equals to number 1, and number 1 is 1. So number 2, number 1 is 1. Next is number 2 equals to number 3. We had calculated number 3 to be 2. So where we have number 2, we put 3. Sorry, no, to be 2. Because it was number 1, which is 1, plus number 2, which is equal to number 1. So 1 plus 1, that is 2. And as we continue, now count equals to count plus 1. What was the value of count? 0. So 0 plus 1 is 1. Where we have count, we put 1 here. So is this true or false? False. You can choose to leave it blank. As a good student, you can fill that. So we have not attained the set objective of this flowchart. The flowchart tells us we have to reach the count 2. The count that we have is at 1. So we have not attained it. So we're going to iterate the process or repeat the process, or in other words, loop this process from the decision point. Again, number 3, remember we had found number 3 to be 2, equals to number 2, okay? Number 2 plus number 1. According to our trace table, number 2 is 2, and number 1 is 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. Where do we put it? In number 3. So that one becomes 3. Output number 3. We have already gotten number 3, so we can output it here easily as 3. I explained why this is different from the rest. We are only outputting number 3. Up here, we are outputting both 1 and 2. That's why we had 1, 1, or 11. Let's proceed. Number 1 equals to number 2. What did we find number 1 to be? Number 1 equals to number 2. So what was number 2? Because that's where number 2 is 2. So where number 1 is, we put 2. That is what the statement says. Number 1 equals to number 2. We had traced value of 2, now value of number 2 to be 2 here. So where number 1 is, we put 2. Because we are told number 1 equals to number 2. Okay, hope that's understood. Then number 2 equals to number 3. Number 2 equals number 3. We had traced number 3 to be 3. So here becomes 3. Then count equals to count plus 1. Count equals to count plus 1. Count, we had traced count to be 1. So plus 1 is 2. So where we have count, we put 2. And then this is now true because the count has been achieved. So this becomes true. That is how you trace through the trace table from a flowchart. These 2 questions will help you in gaining 5 marks out of your sample paper 1 IGCSE and XLP exams. So this is 5 marks. Always tracing this table. It is that simple. I hope it helps you. The rest of the question that I expect us to write, please, this one has been handled in class. I just wanted to help you trace through this table practically and go through it, watch this video over and over again until you feel you're confidently able to understand and handle this question on your own to get those 5 marks. My next focus will be on pseudocode. How do we handle pseudocode? Like, for instance, this one. So this is going to be our next focus. Thank you. I hope you get helped. Enjoy.